All right, I think we are live. Welcome, guys. It's good to be back. So, I want to talk about Jimmy Kimmel because he is getting reinstated by ABC, but not so fast, apparently. It looks like some of the ABC affiliates are saying, go to hell, Jimmy Kimmel, until there's an apology issued and offered. This is from the Post-Millennial. Sinclair, the ABC News affiliate, refuses to air Jimmy Kimmel live on its ABC stations, which is 38 affiliate stations, and will air news programming instead. What could this be all about? Let's see. Beginning Tuesday night, Sinclair will preemptively put the Jimmy Kimmel live across all ABC affiliate stations and replace it with news programming. Okay. Post-Millennial writes, Sinclair Group, a media group that includes 38 ABC stations in U.S. markets, has announced that it will not be airing Jimmy Kimmel live despite the reinstatement of the show by Disney. A statement, and of course, no, because their audience, there's a lot of conservatives in the audience, is not going to be a fan of that, especially right now. A statement released Monday evening reads, beginning Tuesday night, Sinclair will be preempting Jimmy Kimmel Live across our ABC affiliate stations and replacing it with news programming. Discussions with ABC are ongoing as we evaluate the show's potential return. Here it is here. Last week, ABC pulled the show indefinitely after Kimmel falsely suggested that Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin was MAGA, which was, let's be honest, absurd and ridiculous. I mean, when we look at the overwhelming evidence of this killer, I don't know how you come up with this idea that he's right-wing. Trust us. I actually think that Jimmy Kimmel was running cover for his left-wing pals because you had a lot of idiots out there, especially when it first happened. There was a lot of conspiracy theories, and you had people out there trying to push the idea that, well, maybe he was right-wing. Because, of course, all the hateful rhetoric coming from the left is putting the nation at risk, and it is exposing the evil that is festering within the Democratic Party and the left today. It's not the same Democrat Party that you or I grew up with. The party, the era of Clinton, that era is dead. The old-fashioned Democrat Party is dead. You have a new force on the rise, and they are steeped with hateful rhetoric everywhere you look. And look, when it comes to the shooter, again, it's overwhelmingly leftist, no matter how you slice it with this guy. You've got nothing right-wing about him, except maybe his parents were Republican. But, I mean, how many kids do you know break away from what their parents believe? That's common. The idea that, well, his parents were conservative, he must be conservative. And it was unequivocally false and stupid, but the left pushed it anyway. And you're talking about overwhelmingly leftist. You've got law enforcement making sure that everyone understood, hey, this guy is a left-wing radical. You had, of course, the right. You had Donald Trump and the RNC going out there and joining the fray, talking about left-wing violence. And you had the left-wing media out there trying to push this whole narrative that, hey, maybe he's a right-wing guy. But all the physical evidence was to the contrary. You had the Bella Ciao on the bullets. You had all the official statements showing that this guy was a left-wing radical. And yet you had Jimmy Kimmel go out there and lie to everyone directly to their face. Let's go back and take a look at... I don't want to see him. Let's go back and take a look at this clip, again, which I'm sure all of you at this point have seen, but I think it's good to go back and watch it again.
Some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was...
Everyone focuses on the comments about Trump and grief and all that, and that's irrelevant. What matters is this initial part of the statement here.
Some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between.
So, again, this is after the shooting. Everybody can see what's happening here. He has a staff. He has to have known. So, where does he get off? saying this. It seems so bizarre to me that he thought he could actually get away with this. Now, he didn't specifically say, oh, it's a MAGA shooter, but obviously it's implied. And it gives cover to left-wing radicals to still be out there and be violent. And it also makes me wonder because, and I mentioned this the last time I talked about this, but we, as a country, the government went after Alex Jones. If you guys remember, Alex Jones was made some crazy statements that you had a shooting at a school and that it was all fake, that there were actors, crisis actors, and all that. And he gets sued for $1.5 billion. The idea was to bankrupt and destroy Alex Jones. So I kind of wonder, does this open the door for our good friend Jimmy Kimmel? And yes, Smith, they need to fire Jimmy Kimmel. It would seem that would be the right choice, but I don't know. I don't know how the network is going to navigate this because, again, you're talking about easy lawsuit here by the Turning Point USA group. I don't know. Because you've got this statement from Kimmel, right? Who's implying that the shooter is right wing, even though it's demonstrably false. Now you would have to, I think you'd have to prove malice, maybe. I'm not a lawyer, so I have limited knowledge here, but it would seem to me that maybe. And then what about it being defamatory? I from my humble opinion, I would think that would fall in line with this because the idea is to label conservatives or Charlie Kirk allies as enablers of assassins. That's the whole point. That's why the left is trying to spin this, because that is what they don't want pointed right back at them. They don't want the stigma of violence to stick, even though it's pretty obvious to anyone who's been paying attention that the radical left has been increasingly violent over the last 15 years. Obviously, you've got the hate groups, Black Lives Matters or BLM. You have the hate group and now terrorist group, Antifa. These are the militant arm of the Democrat Party, but they are by no means the only ones. And we've all seen this with the celebrations of Charlie Kirk's death on the left everywhere. Even if you were not a political wonk, you couldn't help but notice that these crazy lunatics were all over your feeds, whether it was TikTok, YouTube, or maybe less on YouTube than others, Instagram, X, Blue Sky, especially if you were on that left-wing radical platform. It was everywhere. And I've even seen, and I might do a react to it at some point, but there's a content creator named Shoe on Head. She's kind of a mostly left-wing, but has some right-wing opinions from time to time. And she herself is having a bad reaction to all of this. Can't believe that her friends are crazy, and just did a video. And again, I might react to it, but where she said, have I been blind? And I'm paraphrasing. Have I been blind all this time that my friends were like this? She's a new mom, and this stuff just hit her hard. So I mean, this should come as no surprise that Jimmy Kimmel is getting the boot here, or at least from the affiliate networks. Obviously, Disney is reinstating his show. So from what I understand, it's is it Nexstar and then Sinclair? They're both booting Kimmel from their network for now. So Sinclair will not lift suspension of Jimmy Kimmel on their stations until formal discussions were held with ABC regarding the network's commitment to professionalism and accountability, which obviously there is none right now with Jimmy Kimmel because they're just going to put him back on the air. At bare minimum, he probably needs to be fined and probably fired. If you or I were to go out at a network and say something crazy and false like that, then yeah, I think we would get fired for sure. Sinclair is also calling upon Mr. Kimmel to issue a direct apology to the Kirk family And they put out a statement saying, furthermore, we asked Mr. Kimmel to make a meaningful personal donation to the Kirk family and Turning Point USA. Regardless of ABC's plans for the future of the program, Sinclair intends not to return Jimmy Kimmel Live to our air until we are confident that appropriate steps have been taken to uphold the standards expected of a national broadcast platform. And you've got a bunch of news networks now talking about this, but yeah, there was celebration yesterday on the left that, hey, look at us, we're gonna bring back Jimmy the Bimmy Kimmel, no consequences, Jimmy. But the fat lady has not yet sung on this issue, and I, for one, will not feel bad about this. And I'm just curious to see if this is going to end up in some kind of a defamation lawsuit. That's where I'm curious to see if this is going to go, because it should. Edward Vila, so is he back or what? I mean, I'm not going to watch any of it, but is he still coming back Tuesday? Yeah, so he's coming back, but not on a bunch of ABC affiliates. So there's a bunch of affiliates that are simply going to refuse to put his show on the air, and instead they're going to run news programs. So too bad, so sad for Jimmy the Bimmy Kimmel. Now, this is a new format that I'm testing, if you haven't noticed. I'm kind of toying around with the idea of doing live clips instead of doing these live recorded on Twitch and then uploading them here. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to a couple of other React news that I kind of wanted to look at, and then we'll go from there. We'll wrap it up. But if you enjoy this new format, let me know. And I might start doing more of these in the future. It's more fun for me anyway. We get to interact with each other rather than me just speaking to you. It's nice to be able to actually interact with you in the comments and in chat. I want to switch over to this story. This is from the radical left news outlet Daily Beast, and I thought this was rather funny because, I mean, these guys come up with some of the weirdest and strangest news stories or opinion pieces that I've ever seen. And this is a classic example of this radical news outlet and their strange opinions. This is by David Rothkopf, who says the MAGA movement is ready to dump Donald Trump. Here's his replacement. With the holy moly, the future of MAGA is Christian nationalism, and that calls for a heavenly figure at the helm. I mean, okay. First of all, the guy's an idiot. Donald Trump is MAGA. Now, when he's gone, there's going to be there will need to be a replacement. But I don't see anyone on the right that's sitting there going, "Yep, we're ready to get rid of Donald Trump." That's simply not going to happen. That is dreaming. But let's see what this crazy person has to say. He writes, "We have seen the future of MAGA, and it is not Donald Trump. But even Trump has to be impressed with who he is being replaced with. Sunday's memorial for Charlie Kirk was, on one level, a moment of reflection on the conservative activist's life, and one of catharsis for his supporters given the trauma of his murder." God, I really hate the overuse of the word trauma, by the way. Even though in this particular context it works. But you got a lot of young kids going out there, "I've got my trauma from my breakups." It's just, it's one of those pet peeves of mine. Anyway, but on another, it was the most significant high-level gathering of MAGA leaders since Trump's inauguration, and in that respect, it was strikingly different from any other such conclave that we have ever seen. Yeah, it was a funeral, Mr. Whatever your face is, Mr. David Rothkopf. This was a big deal. In fact, I got to be honest with you, I actually think watching this, it makes me wonder if this country might be headed for a religious revival. Already, the younger generation has been deeply dissatisfied with the previous generation's lives, the millennials, the Xers. And as a culture, we've been shifting away from our religious past. You know, it's never been the official stance of the United States, but we've always been a Christian nation. And it's part of what drove us forward. But things have shifted, right? Well, I wonder if this is opening the door for something different, because Charlie Kirk's impact on his life is now on steroids. I've been seeing a lot of people on X that were profess to be either Islamic or leftist radicals who are having second thoughts, and this is anecdotal, of course, but they're having second thoughts about their side of the aisle, and also being deeply impressed with how these Christians handle themselves during that particular moment. Who knows? It might just be a flash in the pan, but I kind of wonder, right? I wonder if that's going to turn into something much larger than just a one-off incident. Let's see. Anyway, he goes on to say, on Sunday, for the first time ever, God, he's just hoping, Donald Trump was not the center of attention. Which is an odd thing for this guy to say because, yes, Charlie Kirk was murdered. They were celebrating his life. They were memorializing Charlie Kirk. What crack is this guy on? Again, this is the Daily Beast. And in fact, he seemed almost out of place there, out of step with its tone and its clear focus on the future of the right wing in American politics. Quite apart from the looming presence of Kirk himself, the most important voices at the event were his widow, Erica Kirk, again, the widow of the murdered man, and Vice President J.D. Vance. Erica Kirk's speech was mostly emotional, resonant. Her public forgiveness of her husband's murderer was clearly the signature moment. But she also established, with her language and focus, the character of the event and revealed its purpose. You mean aside from mourning the death of her husband? Vance's remarks, meanwhile, were the strongest of the senior Trump administration officials who appeared on stage. That is true both because he seemed to be the person most genuinely close to Kirk and also because he was the most in tune with Erica. Well, from my understanding, Charlie Kirk pushed to put Vance in there. So I guess they were friends before, to my understanding. Anyway, while Trump spoke as a politician, Erica Kirk and Vance adopted an approach that appeared more consistent with televangelists. As Erica stated explicitly, what they were there to advance was the politics of religious revival. Their message was unmistakable. The future of MAGA is Christian nationalism. Okay. The central figure of their movement going forward would be not Trump, but Jesus. I think that's always been their stance. That was the thing with Charlie Kirk, is he was deeply religious, he was deeply Christian, and he wanted to make no bones about it, because that's what inspired him in every facet of his life. But he was willing to let people, live their lives, do what they had to do. But yeah. So of course that's going to be one of their focuses. They're trying to save people from hell. That's the whole purpose of being a Christian, right? So on the face of it, this guy writes, it's hard to object to such a shift. Clearly, such a move would be a big step up, a transition from one of the worst of men, a living catalog of vices, he's speaking about Donald Trump, who has been supported his entire life by the wages of sin, to a deity, the epitome of virtue. Now, I have to ask, I don't know this guy from Adam, but he is writing for the Daily Beast, which is an epitome of crazy vice-filled, faux news. It's funny for him to, anyway, whatever. Now, what is more, it is a natural evolution for the American right, which in recent years has had an increasingly religious bent to its structure and focus. Now, that's true, because the right up until now has been mostly silent. Yes, Smith, this guy is definitely a crackpot. But the religious right there was a semi-revival state, I think, back in the 80s, but they derailed themselves with their focus on devil in the rock music and things like that, and it just didn't turn into anything big. But this I don't know, guys. This is just my opinion right now, but I'm wondering if this is going to be something different. I wonder if this is going to resonate, because there's a lot of disillusioned young people. The youth in the United States have been decimated thanks to the economy and thanks to the COVID lockdowns, and then the dating world's a nightmare. The introduction of social media and the dating apps have destroyed dating. There's 30% of young men today that are under the age of 40 are either virgins or they are sexless for at least a year or longer. And so there's people aren't dating, they're not getting married. I think the last time I saw the statistics, it was 5.1 people per 1,000 were getting married. So there's a lot of young people who are aching and yearning for something more. And the death of Charlie Kirk might end up being a flashpoint here that changes everything. But it might not. I just get the strange feeling that maybe we're on the cusp of seeing something different happen here. Anyway, let's go back to this crazy crackpot. He says, what is more, it is a natural evolution for the American right, which in recent years has had an increasingly religious bent to its structure and focus. Evangelism at large has become a core part of the MAGA base. Newsflash to the Daily Beast here, that's always been the core part of the MAGA base. You just maybe haven't noticed it because you've had Trump derangement syndrome. It's been Orange Man bad, Hitler, 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 and you have missed the obvious memo. Movements like Dominionism, which argues that America is a Christian nation that would have Christian leaders guiding the country based on Christian principles, which, by the way, historically, yes, that is what it was. Have you ever heard of the Great Puritan Migration? 60,000 Puritans would make up the original colonists all over the New World because they were fleeing Catholic persecution. Yeah, that is the fundamental base of the U.S. And they have been increasingly influential, he goes on to write, within Republican officials, jurists, and commentators. But there are deeply troubling elements to this trend. Well, of course he would think so. First, of course, is the fact that not all Americans are Christian or even religious. Well, it's better than Islam, I guess. And that one of the principles on which this country was founded was the separation of church and state. I bet you this guy doesn't understand why there is a separation of church and state. The reason why we have the separation of church and state is because our founding fathers understood that power corrupts. The Catholic Church had become deeply corrupt before the Reformation. And what would help fuel the Protestant movement, which literally means to protest, was that the Catholic Church at one point started charging for something called indulgences. You see, and this is a crude explanation for the difference between Protestants and Catholics, but the Protestants believed that faith was permanent. So once you believe, that's it, you're in, and that you could pray to God directly. While the Catholic Church believes that salvation is you have to believe, but there's also works involved, and you can't pray to God directly. You got to go through the priest. You got to go through the saints. And so what the church started doing is they started charging people for forgiveness. So if you wanted to go to heaven, you got to pay the church money. This was a big problem. The church had become deeply corrupted. They were embedded in power. So that changed, okay? And so then they started killing the Protestant Christians. I mean, Bloody Mary killed like 300 Protestants or something like that. So they ended up fleeing, and then they would form the original colonies. And when they became their own country, they remembered where they came from, and they said, let's not have that happen again. The government and the church must be separate, because they understood that religious tyranny could come from a overtly controlled religion. But I bet you this guy from the Daily Beast has no idea. Hey, Gunmetal, welcome. Let's see. But let's continue with his writing here. Also troubling, he writes, is the degree to which so many televangelists in America have themselves become corrupted by money and power. Now, that's fair. That is an actual true statement. But I think most of them, and this is just from my 20,000 yard stare view here, I've always thought that most televangelists were a bit corrupt. I'm sure not all of them were, but there's a lot of slimy people that use television to promote their business. Anyway, nothing illustrates this fact so well as their embrace of as corrupt a person as Trump as an agent of higher power, a quasi-religious figure himself. See, this guy doesn't get it. First of all, in the Christian faith, people who are criminals can be forgiven. If you go back to Jesus on the cross, when he's dying, he's got a murderer next to him who asks to be forgiven. Jesus forgives him while he's dying on the cross. The Apostle Paul killed a lot of Christians before he was converted to Christianity. So this is par for the course for the Christians. And Donald Trump has, at least publicly, changed his attitude towards Christianity deeply. And they also understand that the left has become radically evil with a lot of their ideology. Take the trans issue. We're mutilating not just adults, but young children. And so, yeah, they're going to go for someone who's going to fix it, even if he's not a perfect person, which Donald Trump is by no means perfect. But let's continue with this guy. He says, in fact, without for a moment doubting the sincerity of the beliefs held by many of those present at Kirk's memorial, or those who embrace Christianity in its many forms, it cannot be denied that there is a hucksterism and con artistry to be found among prominent church leaders who echo the approaches and abuses of Trump himself. We seem to be on the verge of replacing, he writes, one type of hypocritical con with another. Add all these factors together, and it is hard to deny that the desire of so many at the memorial is to recast the goals of the right, not in terms of the merits of their policies, but in terms that define the rhetoric of tolerance and free speech aside, their opponents as evil or out of favor with heavenly powers. My friend, Mr. David Rothkopf of the Daily Beast, they have always thought your side evil. And they have for a long time. Because the Democrat Party that used to be just the party of big government, and it used to be right versus left, was big government versus small government, which was the better way to run the country, has morphed into let's chop off your dicks and let's become an Orwellian authoritarian nightmare government. Yeah, things have changed. Now, some, he writes, the ever-fiery Trump aide Stephen Miller, for example, were explicit in this regard. He says, taking us from an American divided by politics to one divided by religion into virtuous true believers and those who are destined for hell is not exactly progress. Further, putting a new progress. Have you seen where progress has taken us? Anyway, further, putting a new face on this movement, even if it is the face of Jesus himself, will not exactly divest it of the other elements like racism or misogyny. What? Okay. So is he trying to include what he believes is the red pill movement with the religious right? That definitely doesn't track. The religious right has certainly not picked up the mantle of the red pill community. Now, anyway, he goes on to write, certainly studying the work of the man whose life was celebrated, and the fact that it was celebrated on Sunday demonstrates this clearly. This guy's a fucking idiot. He has never once actually listened to a full Charlie Kirk statement, because you can watch 100 hours of Charlie Kirk, and you are never going to find this guy saying something that is misogynist or racist. Try it. You're not going to find it. So he wraps up his article by saying, so while the names of the players and some of the rhetoric may change, the essence of the MAGA movement will not. Nor will appropriating the language of Jesus or the Bible make those with hate or greed in their heart holy. Yeah. Wait, so he just said that nothing's going to change, but we spent this whole article talking about how, okay. Well, all right, so we learned nothing with Daily Beast. There you go. So that's classic Daily Beast for us. Maybe sometime we'll go back into it. These guys crack me up, but man, oh man, oh man. Speaking of, I'm going to change tracks one more time here before we call it. This is from the conservative news outlet American Wire. But I saw this a couple days ago, and it was on my docket to discuss. Gunmetal says, "Yeah, defeated the purpose of the article in the finish." Yeah, I'm purposely doing a new format here where I'm not pre-reading these articles. I just kind of get a gist for what it is, and then that way we can go in it live together. I had no idea that he kind of undercut the whole thing at the end. It was like, and never mind. That was good stuff. So this is from right-wing news outlet American Wire, and they did a story here, and I think you're going to see this trend absolutely explode, where apparently the LGBT community is getting rid of the T and Q, that the breakup, it looks like, is beginning. Because I think the lunatics on the left, because of their desperate need, see, the gay community got everything that they wanted. After decades of fighting, they finally got gay marriage passed. They got their equal rights passed. And the whole country, as a whole, said, you know what? All right, we're just going to move on from this. And once they got it, they had no more crusade. And the left is the modern day left is made up of a bunch of radical disparate movements. Movements of hate, movements of rage, movements of, overcoming tyranny. And then when they didn't have that anymore for the gay community, they had to move the goalposts. And thus the trans community became the next focus. And this is where things got a little weird. Because the trans community is not inherently the gay community. You could be trans and heterosexual or normal. You can, and you can be gay and trans, right? But they are not they are not required for one to have the other. But the trans and the queer community joined up with the gay community to keep the crusade going. But the problem is they girl boss too close to the sun because the trans community is crazy. Not only is it anti-science and it's absolute lunatism. I'm just making up a word there, but it's crazy. But they're gross and they're weird, especially when you're talking about chopping off little kids' body parts for the sake of becoming trans. This was a bridge too far for most normal people who are going to look at this and go, what in the hell is going on here? Why are we doing a chop and take off of me procedure on a little child? And so it's undone a lot of the progress for the gay community. It is hurting them that they are affiliated and associated with the trans community. So let's see what American Wire has to say about this. They say the LGB International dropped a video that they are calling their Declaration of Independence. I guess this is it. So let's watch.
Declaramos a independência LGB porque tudo bem meninos gostarem de bonecas e meninas odiarem vestidos.
We are declaring our independence because we're tired of people who aren't lesbian, gay or bisexual speaking for us in our name.
Vi bryter oss loss för att homo- och bisexuella har olika åsikter, men HBTQI är ett åsiktspaket.
Yeah, see, let's go back and read this. So this woman says, we're breaking free because homosexuals and bisexuals have different opinions. Well, LGBTQI barbecue is one fixed. That's right. These people became a monolith that you had to agree with everything that they said, or else the lunatic radical mob was going to come for you. They were going to cancel you. Look at what happened to J.K. Rowling. She was a big leftist, a big advocate for the gay community. But when she said, you know what, I'm not comfortable with women being deleted from society and replaced with, what is a woman? What a birthing person, blah, blah, blah. Then they turned on her with a vengeance. They wanted to destroy her. They hate her. There are so many of them that have asked for her to be killed. I mean, it is gross. It is horrifying. A lot of these lunatics are radical. Ironic use of the word fixed. Very good, Gunmetal. I'm glad you caught that. Yes, fixed as in chopping things off.
Ett åsiktspaket.
女同性恋
We're declaring LGB
和男同
independence
性恋逐渐失去
because
立
we've
足之
lost
地，
our
因此我们在此宣告
lesbian and gay
LGBT 正
spaces.
式独立。
Which is ironic, too, because that is exactly what the trans community was doing to the female community. They were forcing themselves upon female spaces. And everyone on the left was marching to this tune, pretending that the emperor had clothes on, pretending that science no longer mattered, despite being the party of science. They just threw out the brains, jumped on board to this retarded movement, and Bob's your uncle, here we are. Lunatic land. And so the gay community is finally saying, oh my God, we're losing everything right now. We need to get out of here. If your acronym has more than 5 letters, you're basically a word with extra steps. That's right. Well, it got to the point of lunacy, and yet it still took the gay community years to have the balls, no pun intended, to actually do something about it.
Обявяваме независимост на ЛГБ общността, защото еднополовите връзки се нуждаят от правен.
See, and these guys in Bulgaria saying same-sex relationships need legal status everywhere, which is why they're dropping this, because they understand that most normal people are never going to accept mutilating your body in the name of, look at me, I'm something different.
Статут навсякъде.
Declaramos la independencia
From Spain, we declare LGB independence
porque los derechos
because
que
the
tanto
rights
nos
we
ha
have worked
costado
so hard to
conseguir
achieve are
están
being
siendo
threatened
amenazados
by
por
gender
identidad de género.
ideology. Yeah, and can I just say, we need to dump this whole rebranding of gender. Gender has always meant sex, but they rebranded it so that they could change the definition of what sex is and do it in an undercover way.
The LGB is declaring independence because being a feminine man doesn't make you a female.
Right. And you know, something else that vanished after the LGBTQ plus barbecue movement took off was tom girls. You know, when I grew up in the 90s, there was a lot of tom girls. They were girls that liked to dress in pants and go roughhouse with the boys, but they were still girls. They were happy being girls. Today, if you're a tom girl, there's going to be 1,000 people pressuring you to come out as trans. But that's what happens when you have an insane ideology that drives your motive to get up in the morning and live. Switzerland, this woman says, because lesbian spaces now welcome men.
We're declaring LGB independence because we've had enough of pronouns.
Yeah, and there was a gay dating app. There was a gay dating app that for lesbians that was being overrun with trans women, and they were banning women, if I remember the story right, that who refused. In fact, oh my God, I got to look this up. Let me see here. Who were refusing to accept dating a trans man or a trans woman, a man, and they were getting banned off the platform. Let me see if I can find this here. This was so hilarious. There's just so much. Yeah. Okay. So I don't understand these people. Like, how do you wake up in the morning and go, yep, I'm going to be insane today? Okay. This was a couple of years ago. Lesbian dating platform sends a message to transphobes. Delete our app. In other words, if you are a lesbian who likes women but don't want to date men who pretend to be women, get out of this app. By the way, they had to reverse this later, if I remember correctly. But this, I'm just going to read you a snippet of this. A popular lesbian dating app has one message for users who don't want transgender people on the platform. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Her, a global dating and network platform for lesbians and other queer people looking for love and friendship, sent a mass notification to its users on Wednesday, a message for transphobes. Time to delete their app. They said, we have a very big, thriving lesbian community on Her, and so we want to make that message really clear. All lesbians are welcome and celebrated on Her. Trans lesbians, non-binary lesbians, and just, you know, it was so stupid. They were literally trying to force lesbians to date women with penises. Yeah, this movement was going to implode at some point. Marianne Connolly Poblio created indulgence, not for forgiveness, but less than time of punishment in purgatory. Yeah, but again, see, that's forgiving your sins to a certain degree. And again, that was a greed move to bilk the populace of their money. That is classic government/church corruption. But let's continue with this. But thank you, Marianne, for that input here. Let's continue with this video. This guy says, this is again from this gay video, because we've had enough of pronouns. Because men can't become lesbians. Because gay rights are not against women's rights. Yeah, I mean, isn't it amazing that the LGBTQ plus community lost the plot so badly? This whole movement, I think, will likely set back the gay community potentially a generation. The backlash is so severe that they have to do this now, because if they do not, let me tell you something. I think you could see a day where gay marriage gets pulled back. I'm not predicting it, but it wouldn't surprise me because the backlash is so severe. And if it grows, it could reach that point. Because don't forget, you had Christians prior to gay marriage becoming a thing here in the U.S. warning that this kind of debauchery would happen. And everyone said, oh, you're crazy. But we got here. Crazy enough, it still happened. Netherlands, because we wanted to break down gender norms, not our bodies. She's talking about the mutilation.
Dichiariamo
We're declaring
l'indipendenza
LGBT independence from Italy because we're fed up. Norway, we're declaring LGBT independence because girls can be butch without changing our bodies. We're declaring LGBT independence from France because male homosexuality is still illegal in 64 countries.
L'homosexualité masculine reste encore pénalisée par la loi.
We declare independence because there's no such thing as non-binary. I mean, look, unbelievable. The gay community is having to slap their own people around saying, come on, guys. What are you talking about? Non-binary is such a stupid, made-up, retarded thing. And I just don't know how you buy into this stuff. What kind of lunacy makes you go, well, I guess today it's double plus good. I swear, a lot of these kids should have been taught Orwell 1984 in school because this kind of insanity is everywhere.
Because wealthy legacy LGBTQ plus organizations have betrayed the same-sex attracted population.
Which was always going to happen. There's no way you can push the insanity of the trans and the queer community and expect that the gay community would survive. That's simply not going to be how that works. You can't, if you're a gay guy and you're into guys and you're being forced to date a woman because she now identifies as a man, I'm sorry, that's not how that game works.
Rydym yn datgan annibyniaeth LGB I amddiffyn ein gwagleoedd a diogelu ein hawliau.
From Denmark, because there isn't anything wrong with kids who don't conform to stereotypical gender expression. Right, and so on it goes. Let's see. So this gay community basically is saying, go to hell to the trans community. And they go through all the statements here. And LGBT International wade into the fray on X about their video post saying, perhaps, and I guess this is replying to somebody here, but this is perhaps, but LGBT alliances have been running for many years in the UK and elsewhere, so LGBT is now well understood to be lesbian, gay, and bi people who do not believe in gender identity ideology. This, my friends, is going to be the future of the gay community. They are going to fight tooth and nail to separate themselves. It's probably too late, though, because the last 15 years, they have been squashed together, and they went along with it willingly. It's going to take a miracle if they can reframe this to say, oh, no, we were never really part of this. Ignore your lying eyes. Pretend you didn't live the last 10 to 15 years and that we were never for this stuff. And then you got this guy, the Iowan, replying to the LGBT International saying, I will be an ally to this organization. Bob, this has been a long time coming, a long time since the various folks have co-opted the LGBT movement, for lack of a better term, into the vast alphabet soup of today. This needed to happen. Another ex-poster says, bravo, I think this will be enormously successful and revealing. It's high time you stood up and rejected the takeover. And then finally, MAGA in the Matrix says, I've been saying this is the only way you can salvage everything you worked for all these decades. But again, it might just be too late for the LGBTQ plus barbecue groups here, because you can't spend a decade plus threatening people with death, threatening people with cancellation if they didn't march to the tune of your drum and go, now, oops, we changed our mind. Never mind. Ignore your lying eyes. This didn't happen. We were never for this stuff. So, who knows? But we wish the LGBT International good luck and hope that you can somehow find a way to undo that which was done. So, by the way, before I let you guys go today, I saw this. So, for those of you who have been part of this channel for a long period of time, you would remember that we used to be a medical news channel. No longer, because of the restrictions that Google put on that conversation, to the point where we couldn't talk about anything without compromising the truth. Like I did the final straw for me was doing a story on, there was a lawsuit against Gardasil. These are the makers of the HPV vaccine, and they were getting sued. It was $1 billion lawsuit over potential injuries that the drug may have caused. And I was covering a court case on this, and the article was yanked from YouTube because it was harmful for people to know the story. And I said, okay, I'm out. Well, apparently, Google is now making quiet moves, my friends, to slowly start rolling back some of the lunacy that they enforced during the pandemic and onwards. This is by the New York Post. They write, Google is going to reinstate YouTube's accounts banned for repeated violations of COVID-19 content. Meaning if you didn't agree with the government status quo, they banned the crap out of people who dared to speak their own mind during the pandemic. Which is ironic because this kind of lightly coincides with the LGBTQ cancellation culture too. Anyway, so Josh Christensen wrote this article. Google announced Tuesday it was going to reinstate YouTube accounts that were banned permanently for posting then controversial content related to the COVID-19 pandemic. It was only controversial, by the way, from the lunatic leftists and the powers that be that were controlling the social media platforms. This update was according to a letter by Google's attorneys that it sent to a House panel. So they're probably worried about getting in big trouble. And there are lawsuits. Like Trial Site News is involved with a lawsuit against the Trusted News Initiative, which Google and YouTube are part of. This was before it's led by RFK Jr.'s law firm, the Children's Health Defense. And this was before he decided to run for president. They approached our company and asked us to help them build the case, which we did because we were also censored. This channel was, if you want to know where the ivermectin story first started percolating, it was Trial Site News. And I inadvertently played a big role in that story getting out there. Dr. Pierre Corey, Peter McCullough, all those guys, they got their meta-analysis data from our company, Trial Site News. It was a crazy time. Anyway, let's see. Users included FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino, White House Counterterrorism Chief Sebastian Gorka, and War Room podcast host Steve Bannon had all been permanently removed from the site in recent years. These channels were once flagged for repeated violations of COVID-19 and elections integrity policies adhered to by Google will now be no longer in effect, according to a letter reviewed by the Post from Alphabet's chief counsel to the House Judiciary Committee. The chief counsel, Daniel Donovan, also claimed in his missive to Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan that YouTube never prohibited posting. What? Wait, what? Daniel Donovan, the chief counsel, claimed in his missive to Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan that YouTube never prohibited posting related to... Wow. This guy's a lying son of a bitch, let me tell you. Holy crap. YouTube absolutely censored the crap out of people. They did all sorts of horrible things, which I can't say here because this channel will still get shadow banned. In fact, we're still in a shadow ban right now on this channel. I made the mistake of talking about the Palestine issue and the tariff wars, and then YouTube decided to lower our reach. Anyway, Alphabet or Google also expressed appreciation for the accountability that Jordan's panel provided to a years-long investigation into potential violations of First Amendment rights on its platforms. And let's hope that Jim Jordan does not back off at all on this, because these people need to pay a heavy price for censoring Americans over the last 5 years. And there needs to be law changes. Like, social media platforms should not be allowed to ban or censor, or deboost, or shadow ban anyone for their speech outside of criminal activity. That should be a straight-up period behind all of this. But they do. They get away with it. They are not considered the public square, even though they are absolutely the public square. Because let's be honest, our generations now spend all of their time talking online. That is where the conversation is. That is where the public square is. This is why X being bought out by Elon Musk was such a big deal. Because for the first time in years, freedom of speech was partially restored. So, anyway, well, I'm going to leave it there, guys. It has been a pleasure being with you all today. And Ben deleted. I haven't seen you in a while. If you can see this, it is my personal YouTube Censors Day Off. Absolutely. So, anyway, if you guys like this format, I'm going to be cutting these... this stream into smaller episodes, which then we'll be posting later. And I'm going to start messing around with doing some of these live as we go along. And I'll be doing, not today because I just don't have the time, but I'll be doing back-to-back streams. So there'll be one here, and then it'll be followed up on my alternate YouTube channel, the Topical Umbrella. And this is my personal project, and I'm going to be spending more and more time here as well. And on this channel, I tend to kind of have a bit more fun. It's my own project, so I don't necessarily feel like I need to hold back most of the time. But this is my alt channel. This is my personal project. We're here at To Be Frank. I'm managing both, but Topical is my own personal project. So anyway, so I'll be doing multi-streams throughout the day. So I'll start here, and then I'll go over to Topical afterwards. So that'll be kind of where I'm going next. But again, thank you guys for joining me today. If you liked this, let me know. I'm always reading the comments, both in chat and also on the video itself. And if this is something that y'all like, I'll probably do a lot more of these. They're a lot more informal than the way I've been doing them, and I'll try to do at least one formal video a day if I can. There's going to be a bit of a ramp-up process. I still have some other stuff I'm working on off-stream, and but as more time frees up, I'll be doing more and more of this. And the goal is to get back to doing full-time content creation on both channels going forward. So again, thank you all for being with me today. I look